Welcome to the Silhouettes of Success podcast with your host, successful entrepreneur, broker, and business mentor, Amber Weitzer. Because success comes in all shapes, sizes, and styles, the Silhouettes of Success podcast is shining the light on industrious women with a collection of curated conversations of intentional inspiration designed to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, feed your soul, and gift you with actionable insights directly from inspirational, everyday women who've shown tenacity, grit, and grace, having taken on the challenges in their lives and business and won. Remarkable, down-to-earth, and relatable, Amber and her guests will share with you uplifting and extraordinary real-life success stories, motivational ideas that just might help spark something within you. With the deepest desire to serve you, help you grow so you can begin to shine the light that will illuminate your very own silhouette of success. So, let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success. Our V.I.P featured guest is a multi-talented writer, model, actress, and one-time James Bond girl. She is the author of the compelling new book, Encounter with the Future. Let's hear all about her unique life's journey from childhood in the Iron Curtain, Czechoslovakia, to her rise as an international fashion model and actress. But we are excited to talk to her about being a writer and everything in between. Silhouettes, let's welcome Anika Pavel to the show. Hello, Anika. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Wonderful. I am elated to connect with you and to have you here with us to share your Silhouette of Success journey. So once again, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, milady. I enjoy and our audience loves to hear about the illustration and the early shaping of your silhouette of success. So traditionally, we kick it off by having you share more about your background with the audience. So let's go ahead and start there. Talk to us a little bit about your background.
Well, my background is somewhat unusual because I grew up in a communist Czechoslovakia. To say that things were different is to put it mildly, but it shaped me in some ways for the future. It made me tougher. I also grew up with two older brothers in a neighborhood where I was the only girl. So I was a tomboy for most of my life. So I had to skate, I had to play soccer, I became a swimmer, and which was a little bit less illustrious. I wasn't that great, but it still toughened me up. It really taught me to lose. And the swimming coach always used to say to me, it doesn't matter where you end up, important thing that you finish. And it was a big lesson for me because life has put a lot of problems in my way. When I came to England, the first thing, of course, was that I had to learn to speak English. You take lessons back home and you think, oh, I can speak English. And when you come to the airport, you suddenly get this avalanche of the foreign language and you realize you don't understand a single word. And so that sobered me up real fast. But, it's things never were that easy back home. And we learned to do with what we had to do. When there was no meat, we had bred rabbits. And so we had food. We had chickens for eggs. And so I just thought, okay, so I have to learn to do it. And I put my head in the books. And of course, it was late 60s, beginning of 70s. So listening to music helped. And so I concentrated on the slower songs. The words by Bee Gees was a great help because it was enunciated clearly and I could learn. And you remember it easier with a song. And within the 3 months, I could really get by. And so that was the first hurdle. And then when the woman I was supposed to be an au pair, but there were no children. So I was taking care of her lodgers. And that was fine with me because I didn't mind what work you do as long as I could be in a West. I mean, West for us in Czechoslovakia was a dream come true. And then when Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, that was really tough because I had my parents visiting and I did not know what was happening. The tanks were in Prague, and eventually my parents decided they will go back home. But because I was already in England for a year and I had a visa for a little longer, they said, stay and learn. And my dream at the time was to be a journalist. So I stayed. But then and the woman I was working for, she said, of course you can stay here. Well, there was another little change happening. She had to go to prison because she was doing illegal abortions, which I was completely unaware of. I was so young and naive, and I just had no idea. Anyway, so then I ended up homeless because, for better or worse, her house was my home. She was like my second mother. She was wonderful. And she really wanted to help people, that young girls. And so I find myself in London alone. And I worked, I had to go to her lawyer, and he offered me a job. And then in the office, they told me, why don't you enter the modeling competition? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? But I did. And so I happened to be one of the 800 girls there was 10 girls they wanted to select for a New Year show. And so that's how I became a model. And I've started living in YWCA, but with my newfound work, I was able to find an apartment or rather flat in London. And and then again, I knew I couldn't be a freelance model. I needed money. I was completely alone, so there was like no one who could have helped me. So I worked as a waitress. I worked as a cashier. Did any job that came my way, but that modeling was always up there because when I took the course at the London Academy of Modeling, as strange as that sounds, I met a photographer who actually took the photograph that is on the cover of my book. And he helped me put a book together. And ultimately, he guided me that I could find a job as a permanent model in a house, in a modeling house, presenting clothes to places like Selfridges or Harrods, a big department store. And then little by little, I saved up money, and then I kind of ventured into photographic work and took a job as a waitress at night. So I worked for a long time as a waitress, and then I worked as a model. And then the work started to get better. I got into the TV shows, and I made some little movie appearances, and just got, it progressed from there. This all took a long, long time, and lots happened in between, which is all in my book. And so I ended up in a James Bond movie, which was a real honor. And we did a lot of promotions and worked with Roger Moore, who was the most wonderful actor and very helpful and very kind. And I met him on a 50th anniversary in New York City, and he still remembered me. I guess the accent, in some ways, it was a hindrance, but some way people do remember you when you have an accent. And so, yeah, I remember that voice. I remember that voice. So that was a real thrill. And so I married American, and we kind of trooped around the world. And then I had children, and my dream was always right. But, I've realized at some point I couldn't really write in Slovak anymore because I was too immersed into life in London and then eventually in America. But my children were teaching me, and it was fun. First, at the beginning, it was fun for them to, correct the mother. And later on, they encouraged me, and I went to school and started to write. And then they wanted to know more about my background, about Czechoslovakia. So I wrote about my grandmother. I wrote about my father, and he was born in Austro-Hungarian Empire and had to speak only Hungarian. and how it was really beat into him and how it eventually helped him. And his philosophy on life became, don't hold grudges, because you never know what even the worst experience can pay you back at some point in your life. And it was his wisdom and my mother's wisdom, who believed that travel was the best thing that anyone could do, was university of life, as she put it. And so I started to put together for my children the history of my family. And then some of my essays started to get published in magazines, and I won some competitions, and some of them were nominated for prize. So then they said, why don't you put it together as a book? And that's how the book came about.
What an amazing story, or opening to our conversation. I have, and I always tell people, because I am a note taker, I've got 2.5 pages of notes from your story. And just so many things are just monumental in your journey. And so, going back a little bit, I always have my script and I have some standard questions that our audience likes to know, to anticipate, hearing some of these things from our VIP feature guests such as you. But at this point, I'm going to throw the script away a little bit and just touch on some of the things that you talked about. I can envision everything that you were sharing. You painted the canvas of your journey just so perfectly. To me, it's very cinematic. I can see your book and your essays coming into a screenplay. Is that on the horizon?
Well, I hope so.
What a story. As you mentioned, so many of the things, just the visuals, the tanks in Prague, and you working your jobs, and the history of you sharing about, the journey. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, I suppose it is, when you live it, it doesn't appear to be extraordinary because it's just what you have to deal with. When it happens, you deal with it. You have a choice. You give up or you are going to move forward. And I write about how I had to sleep at the railway station in London when Mrs. Lewis, when she went to prison and I had to go to London. I remember there was a song, Have You Seen the Streets of London? And I remember watching this homeless person walking out of the station because the police told him to leave. And I was in this phone booth and I thought, that is not going to be me. I will conquer all the problems that world wants to save to me. And it was really such a strong inner decision that made me so strong. And every time when I had any kind of problems, I always pictured that man walking out of that Victoria train station. And I always thought, I am better off than he is. And I'm going to conquer whatever the problem it may have been.
That,
So,
yeah, that mindset ties back to what you shared in the very beginning of our conversation, even probably going back to the resilience of your youth and being tough with the brothers.
oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, just the mindset. Mindset is a struggle for so many. And sometimes we think we're strong, and like you say, you've got it conquered, but we can lapse in moments of adversity.
Right.
When you think about your journey, and we're going to get into your book a little bit more because I want you to be able to share, so we can help promote that for you. When we talk about growth and dreams and goals, can you think of positive adjustments that you've made in your life or your environment to help support your goals, of whether it be maybe, it could be something small, but it could be reflecting back on going through the steps and the process of pulling your book together? What best practices could you share that helped you make that happen?
The best practice is a discipline, which I have learned from my swimming. And my daughter became a swimmer, and never give up. Failure is never an option. And people so often feel, oh, it's just too much. That sentence never entered my head, ever. because, when that happens, you just feel like there is my mother, there are my brothers, and there is all these people depending on me. And I just felt I have to deal with it. You just do. You move on, and you don't feel sorry for yourself. You just keep going. I won't say that there were times that when what I tend to do, I guess what maybe gave me the resilience is every time when I have some kind of a crisis, I just deal with how to how to overcome it. And once I overcome it, when it's all done, I tend to collapse. And I would have like crying session over nothing. And I remember breaking down, talking to friends, and like minor thing they would mention, and I would break down into this absolute sobbing heap. And people look at me like, what is wrong with you? And I just sort of always manage to, that's one thing I know I owe them to explain, to say, I just been through hell and now it's over. I let myself go. So that was, I suppose that's that kind of a release. I don't build on, I don't leave it there. I empty it out. And tears is my way of doing it.
That is, to me, in hearing how you're able to do that, it's a skill. There's clearly you're wired to handle situations like that. You're just going to handle it and overcome in the moment, the calm and the chaos. Almost a sense of adrenaline working to just take care of it, a survival instinct, and then you get to release it later. And it's very
Survival.
cleansing for you.
Yes,
Yes.
survival instinct, that's what it is. I remember lately I had my daughter's husband had a little problem, and so it was a shocking happening. And so then when everything was okay, I was watching a movie and it was nice and poignant, I would say, but it certainly didn't deserve the half an hour sobbing that came out of me. But it has always been my release.
Well, there's the strength in that. And I say that's a twofold. There's a strength in your capability and ability to go through, as you mentioned, going through hell or going through whatever adversity you're in. But then there's also the strength in allowing yourself to have that release. Unfortunately, sometimes not everybody's able to do that. And that can be just debilitating if they don't release it in whatever form or fashion, but I like yours.
Yes.
It is, tears are cleansing. They say that. They say that. So,
Yeah, and you just,
yeah.
it's you just let it go and then it's gone, then it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you talked about with your father's wisdom. Don't hold grudges, even for yourself, not to
Exactly.
retain that.
That's correct.
Oh,
I never thought of it that way. You see, you live and learn all the time.
that's right. I'm on page 4 of my notes, by the way.
Okay.
So I thank you. But talking through that, we've talked about the positive adjustments. What about when you perhaps get stuck up against maybe a hurdle or something that just you need to power through? Where do you turn to for maybe the motivation or the inspiration? And it could be something fun, it doesn't have to be dramatic. What gives you a burst of energy to get through something that you really want to go after?
Strangely enough, sometimes humor can happen. I wrote an essay which was published in a Philadelphia journal during COVID, when everybody was so frightened and nobody knew what was going on. It was right at the beginning and when people like bought everything. So I went to buy toilet paper and there was none. So I came home and, you know, to release all the fear that was floating around, I sat down and I wrote this story. How, when in Czechoslovakia, there was always something that was short. So, when we had no toilet paper, we used to tear up newspapers and we would crunch them in our hands and then we would put them in a bathroom. And my father hated communists in a degree that it's hard to describe. So, he always used to say, leave the pictures of the communists for me. So he would always do that. And then he was lactose intolerant, and he every so often he would indulge. And then he would come and say, "Okay, where is my Brezhnev?" And he would go and use the Brezhnev. My husband was absolutely horrified. And I said, "Hey, everybody has their Brezhnev, right? Even now, don't we have a Brezhnev around somewhere?" So, so sometimes when I walk around, my husband says, "You looking for your Brezhnev?"
Uh, you're right. The humor, we have to have it. We have to have it in those hard times. And oh my gosh, that's great. That's great. Who would have guessed that that could be a best practice?
But that's how my father released his anger towards,
Yes.
because he suffered under communism so badly, and he was so angry. But it gave him a huge pleasure to be able to go to
In more ways than one.
more ways than one. And so
Oh, yeah.
there you go. Everybody finds the way of release.
That's right. That's right. And he's not holding a grudge then. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
All right, my lady, let's turn to the excitement with we've talked about some essays. Talk to the audience, tell them about your book, Encounter with the Future.
Well, it's a collection of essays, which goes, some of them are history of Czechoslovakia, which is now Slovakia. And it's a Czech Republic and Slovakia. I'm from a Slovak part of the old Czechoslovakia. And it's also lessons about, some lessons about children, some lessons about how to deal with anger and frustration. And it's also a lesson about friendships. I've met people that were so pivotal in my life that has helped me. And as I mentioned, the photograph that is on the cover of the magazine was taken by a young photographer, then very young photographer, who helped me immensely. When I was really, really down and in between jobs, he just got married and had a little girl. And so I lived with them and was helping out with a little girl, and he would take her photographs, and he really set me up for the portfolio. He then moved to Australia, and we lost touch. And miraculously, just before my book came out, I was able to contact him. And so I believe in destiny. It was a destiny that we were meant to get back together. And so it's also dealing with my mother's health and my own. And I was diagnosed with cancer when my daughter was 5 weeks old. And with the same cancer my mother eventually died from. But, this was another example when I had to keep a clear eye and said, okay, well, my mother was diagnosed a long time ago. She was given 5 years. She lived 10. And this is a different time. And I'm going to see my daughter. And yes, I am. I'm seeing her and her children. And as I guess, power of positive thinking. I know it's such a cliche, but I always was thinking I can't afford to fall back when you have 3 children and one is 4 weeks old. Collapsing is not an option. And so little by little, I have come to realize that life is just full of challenges and you just take one at a time. And as I also say in my book, we went to Hong Kong, and I wasn't afraid to travel. When my husband said, would you go to Hong Kong, when my career was really at its peak in London, I said, sure, because it's always something good to learn. And I worked as a model in Hong Kong for a while, but then we went back to Boston and wandered around some more, went to Monte Carlo, and then went to New Jersey. And, I worked then with my daughter in New York for a little while as a model, but she was, like her mother, strong-headed, and she was not going to be a model. And being in a business long enough, I knew that when you book a studio and you book a photographer, this is expensive. And when your little when there is a little brat saying, I'm not wearing that. That's just not right. So I decided, okay, maybe it's time I give up the modeling. And it was at that time, I think, I adopted a dog. And he was a curious little dog. And I was thinking, who would give him up? Who would give up this curious little dog? And I started to write stories about imagining what his life was like. He came from Mississippi, and I adopted him in New Jersey. And so I started to send it to my kids, and they said, wow, Mom, this is quite good. And so I thought, oh, maybe I could write and for children. And so I went to school, and first just online because I felt like I'm too old to go to school. And the teacher said to me, have you noticed that you always pick the oldest group because you could choose to write for 3-year-old, 3 to 4, or various groups. And I always chose the old one. She said, I suggest you take adult group. And so I did. And after the online, I went to a number of writing conferences where I met other writers. And then I went to NYU, which was fantastic for further education. And it was wonderful. I saw people who were my age, people who were younger, people who had accents, and people whose English was worse than mine. There was this wonderful young man from Denmark, and I just thought, that's me when I was 18. And it just made me realize it doesn't matter. Just get on with it. And I started to write, and then I went to Kauai Writers Conference, and that's where I've really met a lot of people and realized that I should start submitting my work. And I did, and I was surprised. The first story got published, and then it kind of rolled from there. And it encouraged me. And I have also written a fiction. I was like, I start with this because my children said, do this first one. It's for the kids. They will want to know. So I said, okay, it's my obligation as a grandmother. And so I did that. But I do have other books ready to go. And I will also publish the Barney books. My dog's name was Barney. So I wrote 10 books about Barney, like stories of his traveling from down south. I think it came from Louisiana or some such place. So those stories are all lining up. But first comes first.
I am so giddy about Barney's stories and his 10 story series. That's going to be exciting. You'll have to keep us looped in so I can always share those links too. What feeds your soul? When do you feel the greatest sense of satisfaction?
The greatest sense of satisfaction, of course, are my children and my grandchildren. You don't want to start me because I'll start bragging.
Well, this is all about you. So if you want to take a minute, I'm watching the time. So I'll be respectful of the clock for your schedule, but this is about you. So please share what you'd like.
Well, I will brag that my oldest son was a professor. He got his PhD in classics. That was his dreams. And he taught at Tulane University. And my second son clerked at the Supreme Court. And my daughter is very successful in her business. She's in a real estate business. My husband was was an analyst, and when she was little, he used to say, "I knew she would be in a real estate because when they played Monopoly, she would wipe her older brothers up, no time at all." And when we used to drive, she would go, "Dad, let's go a scenic route," and they would
Ah,
guess how much did the houses cost, and they would come home and try to figure out if they were right. Okay, that's it. No more about
that's
no more
awesome.
bragging.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, milady, again, respecting your schedule, we will definitely be sharing the links to your upcoming book. And then I will keep an eye for your new books and keep following you, make sure that we're keeping our audience one link away from connecting with you. It has been amazing, 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 and an honor to connect with you and to hear just a portion of your story and your Silhouette of Success journey. As we begin to wrap up, something that we promise our audience is what I call intentional inspiration. And it could be a piece of key go-to advice that maybe you shared, something that resonates with you. I know a lot of people have special quotes that they keep around. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience?
It's a book I always had with me. It's a book about Vincent van Gogh. And it inspired me when I was 15 years old. And it's by Irving Stone. And it's always been with me. I had it in Slovak and I have it in English. And it's about resilience. It's about success. And it's about success doesn't necessarily have to be achieved whilst you can see it. I hope mine will be, but
Yeah.
Vincent definitely didn't. And when the Starry Night came out, that's the other thing I play often if I feel down or if I feel that there are problems that I need to deal with. And that's always been my inspiration.
I love that. I love that. It's very poetic. It is a complete full circle tying back to when we started talking. All right, my lady, the stage is completely yours. Where can our audience go to either find and follow you or connect with you? If you want to share your socials or contact information, it's all for you.
Well, my website is www.anikapavel.com. And I will have my podcast there, and there is my modeling career, my acting career, my writing career, where I come from. So they would learn a lot about me. And if anybody wants to make the TV show, there is also contact information. And I'm also on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. So they can follow me there. And I'm hope to connect with people there too. And I will have some latest book reviews. There actually are quite a few book reviews already there, so they can read that and there will be more. So
Outstanding. Okay, well, we will make sure and have all of your contacts and your links, your social links, in the podcast notes and available for the audience to have. And of course, we'll put it in our social media as well. I encourage everyone to follow and to go get your book. And I am just so excited to pick it up myself. I
yes,
already have it on order.
yeah, oh, great. Well, if you go, anyone who goes on my website, there is a direct link. You just press it and it takes you right to Amazon and you can order it there.
Well, perfect. So, what I would like to make the commitment to you is I will separate that out and title it, just your book link so they can get it from your website. So, that'll be fantastic. All right, Anika, it has been a joy. Truly, it's a treasure and an honor to hear just your journey. I am enamored by your journey and just who you are from the short time we've connected. So I look forward to a lasting relationship. But it has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your Silhouette of Success story. You have been a true light and inspiration for us all.
Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the book.
Thank you. All right, milady. Until then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Silhouettes of Success podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all the new episodes. We are here for you and with you. We encourage you to share this podcast on all your socials and pass on the light to help illuminate another silhouette of success. To find out the latest ways to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, and gain actionable insights, subscribe at thesilhouettesofsuccess.com or connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We're grateful that you tuned in. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be, right here with us. This is the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success.